The thunder of hooves echoed across the vast prairie as Nora Campbell raced her chestnut mare toward the horizon, her heart pounding in rhythm with the animal's gallop. Freedom tasted sweet on her lips, mingled with the dust of the Montana Territory in the summer of 1875. At 22, she was running not just from the stagecoach that had abandoned her miles back after an axle break, but from a life in Boston that had suffocated her spirit with its rigid expectations and arranged marriages. The sunset painted the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples when her horse suddenly stumbled, throwing Nora forward. She tumbled through the air, landing with a sickening thud that knocked the wind from her lungs. As darkness crept into the edges of her vision, Nora glimpsed a figure on horseback silhouetted against the dying light, approaching fast. "Madam? Madam, can you hear me?" A deep, concerned voice broke through her haze. Nora's eyelids fluttered open to find herself staring into the weathered face of a man with intense blue eyes and sun-bronzed skin. His expression was a mixture of concern and wariness as he knelt beside her. "My horse," she mumbled, trying to sit up despite the pain radiating through her shoulder. "Easy now," the man cautioned, gently supporting her. "Your mare's leg is badly twisted. I'm Owen Prescott. My ranch is about 3 miles west of here. Let me help you." Nora hesitated, her Eastern upbringing warning her against trusting strangers, especially rugged cowboys in the untamed West. But as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky and a chill wind swept across the plains, she realized she had little choice. "Nora Campbell," she replied, accepting his outstretched hand. "I was headed to Silver Creek to meet my uncle." Owen nodded, his face betraying nothing as he helped her to her feet. "Silver Creek's still 20 miles north. You'd have never made it before nightfall, especially with that storm brewing." He gestured toward dark clouds gathering on the horizon. "I can take you to my place, get you patched up, and tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you to your kin." The journey to Owen's ranch passed in painful silence as Nora rode double with him, her arms reluctantly encircling his waist. She noted the firm muscles beneath his worn cotton shirt, the smell of leather, and something uniquely masculine. Despite her discomfort, she found herself relaxing against his broad back as they rode through the gathering darkness. The ranch materialized out of the night, a sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, and corrals. As they approached, a lantern light flickered to life on the porch, and a slender figure stepped out. "Pa, you're back," a boy's voice called out, excitement evident in his tone. As they drew closer, Nora could see he was perhaps 10 or 11 years old, with the same striking blue eyes as Owen, but lighter hair that fell in unruly waves. "Samuel, we have a guest," Owen said as he dismounted and reached up to help Nora down. "Miss Campbell had an accident with her horse. She'll be staying with us tonight." Samuel's eyes widened with curiosity as he studied Nora. "Are you hurt bad, miss?" "Just bruised, I think," Nora replied with a gentle smile, charmed by the boy's direct manner. "Samuel, run and turn down the bed in the spare room," Owen instructed. "Then fetch some hot water and my medicine kit." The boy dashed inside without argument, and Owen turned to Nora. "He's a good boy. Lost his mother when he was 4. It's been just the 2 of us since then." Something in his tone, a mixture of pride and lingering sorrow, touched Nora deeply. "He seems wonderful," she said softly. Inside, the Prescott home surprised Nora with its warmth and order. Though modest, the main room featured comfortable-looking furniture arranged around a stone fireplace, shelves lined with books, and walls adorned with a few simple paintings. It wasn't the crude bachelor quarters she had expected from a widowed rancher. Owen helped her to a chair at the kitchen table and began examining her injuries with surprising gentleness. His calloused hands moved efficiently, checking her wrist and shoulder. "Nothing broken," he concluded, "but you'll have some impressive bruises by morning. What brings a proper Eastern lady like yourself all the way out here alone?" Nora stiffened at his perception. "How did you know I'm from the East?" A hint of a smile touched Owen's lips. "Your accent, your clothes, the way you hold yourself. This territory's full of people running from something or someone. I don't pry, but I recognize the signs." Before Nora could respond, Samuel returned with a basin of steaming water and bandages. He watched attentively as his father cleaned a scrape on Nora's arm and wrapped her sprained wrist. "Are you hungry, miss?" Samuel asked. Pa made stew before he went out looking for strays. It's not too bad if you pick around the burned parts. Owen gave his son a mock stern look. My stew is the best in 3 counties, and you know it. The easy banter between father and son created an atmosphere so different from the rigid formality Nora had grown up with that she found herself laughing despite her pain. I'm famished. Burned parts and all. That first meal at the Prescott table marked the beginning of a change in Nora. She watched Owen and Samuel interact, noting their obvious love and respect for each other. Owen was firm but patient, treating his son like a person with valid thoughts and feelings, not as a child to be seen and not heard as her own father had done. After dinner, Samuel insisted on showing Nora his treasured collection of arrowheads and interesting rocks before Owen declared it was past his bedtime. The boy reluctantly said good night, but not before extracting a promise from Nora that she would still be there in the morning to hear his story about the time he and his pa encountered a grizzly bear. Once Samuel had gone upstairs, a momentary awkwardness fell between Owen and Nora. She stood by the fireplace, watching the flames dance while he cleared the dishes. He's quite the storyteller, Nora commented. You've raised him well. Owen joined her by the fire, keeping a respectful distance. I've done my best. Out here, a man learns quickly what matters and what doesn't. Samuel matters. What about his mother? Nora asked cautiously. Owen's face hardened slightly, old pain visible in the tightening around his eyes. Sarah died of fever 6 years ago. She was a city girl too, never quite took to ranch life, but she loved Samuel fiercely. He paused, staring into the flames. What's your story, Miss Campbell? You mentioned an uncle in Silver Creek. Nora nodded, deciding that honesty was the only fair response to his hospitality. My Uncle Thomas is my mother's brother. He left Boston 20 years ago to seek his fortune. He's the black sheep of the family, or was, until I earned that title myself. Owen raised an eyebrow, encouraging her to continue. I refused a marriage my father arranged, she explained, the words coming easier than she expected. The man was wealthy, respectable, and utterly intolerable. When I refused, my father gave me 2 choices, agree to the marriage or be disowned. I chose the latter. That took courage, Owen remarked. Nora shrugged, wincing as the movement aggravated her injured shoulder. Or foolishness. I've never been west of Philadelphia before last month. But Uncle Thomas always wrote about the freedom here, the chance to build a life on your own terms. The West can be harsh, Owen warned. But there's truth in what your uncle said about freedom. Out here, you're judged more by what you do than where you came from. As the evening wore on, they talked of their respective worlds. Nora of Boston society with its rigid rules and superficial values. Owen of the challenges and rewards of ranching in the territory. When Nora finally retired to the spare room, she found herself strangely reluctant to end their conversation. Morning came with golden light streaming through the simple curtains. For a moment, Nora was disoriented, but then the events of the previous day flooded back. She dressed quickly in her travel-worn clothes, wincing at the stiffness in her body. Downstairs, she found Samuel alone at the kitchen table, attempting to cook eggs that were quickly becoming charcoal. Pa had to go check on a sick calf, he explained, frowning at the smoking pan. He said not to wake you, but I thought you might want breakfast. Nora smiled and gently took the spatula from him. How about I help? In exchange for that grizzly bear story you promised. Together they managed to salvage breakfast, and Samuel launched into his tale, complete with dramatic gestures that nearly sent a plate of biscuits to the floor. Nora found herself completely charmed by the boy's enthusiasm and imagination. You tell stories beautifully, she commented when he finished. Do you enjoy reading too? Samuel nodded eagerly. Pa reads to me every night, even when he's tired. He says books can take you places your feet never could. Your father is a wise man, Nora said, impressed by this unexpected depth in the rugged rancher. Ma used to read to me too, Samuel continued, his expression growing thoughtful. Pa says I have her laugh and her kind heart. He studied Nora for a moment with surprising intensity for a child. You're pretty like she was in the picture Pa keeps. Nora felt a blush warm her cheeks. That's very sweet of you to say. Are you going to stay with us? He asked suddenly. The directness of the question caught Nora off guard. I need to get to my uncle in Silver Creek. He's expecting me. Samuel's face fell slightly, but he nodded with a maturity beyond his years. Pa said he'd take you today if you're feeling better, but I wish you could stay longer. Owen returned mid-morning, bringing with him the news that a neighbor would be heading to Silver Creek the next day and could take Nora along. Unless you're in a great hurry, he added. Your mare needs at least a week before she'll be fit to ride, but I could take you today on my horse. Nora found herself strangely reluctant to leave so soon. If it wouldn't be an imposition, perhaps waiting until tomorrow would be best. I'm still quite sore from the fall. Relief flashed briefly in Owen's eyes. No imposition at all. Samuel would never forgive me if I didn't let him show you the kittens in the barn. The day passed pleasantly as Nora's Eastern Reserve gradually melted away in the warmth of the Prescott home. Samuel proudly showed her around the ranch, introducing her to the animals and explaining ranch operations with the expertise of a child who had grown up immersed in the life. Owen, meanwhile, worked on his regular chores but frequently checked on them, his gaze lingering on Nora when he thought she wouldn't notice. That evening, after Samuel had gone to bed, Owen invited Nora to join him on the porch. The night was clear, stars spreading like diamonds across the velvet sky. They sat in comfortable silence for a time, the vastness of the territory spread before them. I understand now, Nora said softly. Understand what? Owen asked, his voice equally quiet in the night air. Why people come west? There's a freedom here, not just in the land, but in how people live. Back east, everything is so confined by walls, by rules, by expectations. Owen nodded. It's not paradise. The winters are brutal. The work never ends, and sometimes the loneliness. He trailed off, then cleared his throat. But yes, there's a freedom worth the hardship. Samuel is fortunate to grow up here, with you, Nora said, genuinely meaning it. You've given him roots and wings both. I try, Owen admitted. Sometimes I worry he needs more than just me. A boy should have a mother's influence too. The conversation shifted to practical matters, the workings of the ranch, Owen's hopes for expanding his herd, Nora's plans once she reached her uncle. Yet beneath the ordinary words ran a current of connection that neither acknowledged but both felt. When morning came, bringing with it Nora's departure, she found herself inventing reasons to delay. She helped Samuel with his reading lesson, assisted with preparing lunch, and even mended a tear in one of Owen's shirts, domestic activities that would have horrified her mother, but which Nora found surprisingly satisfying. The neighbor, Jacob Miller, arrived mid-afternoon with his wagon. He was a friendly older man who greeted Nora with a tip of his hat and assured Owen he'd see her safely to Thomas Campbell's place in Silver Creek. As Nora prepared to leave, Samuel suddenly threw his arms around her waist. "Will you come back to visit us?" he asked, his voice muffled against her skirt. Nora's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. She knelt to his level and met his earnest gaze. "I would like that very much, Samuel." Owen stepped forward, his expression carefully controlled. "You're welcome anytime, Miss Campbell. The door is always open." Their eyes held for a long moment, unspoken words hanging in the air between them. Then Owen took her hand, pressing something into her palm. "A token of Montana," he said quietly, "to remember us by." Opening her hand, Nora found a small, perfectly formed arrowhead on a leather cord. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's one of my best ones," Samuel explained proudly. "Pa helped me put it on the string last night." With a final goodbye, Nora climbed into Jacob Miller's wagon. As they pulled away, she turned to watch the figures of the man and boy growing smaller in the distance, an unexpected ache forming in her chest. Silver Creek turned out to be a bustling frontier town, larger and more developed than Nora had expected. Jacob Miller delivered her directly to her uncle's door, a handsome two-story building that housed both Thomas Campbell's law practice on the ground floor and his living quarters above. Uncle Thomas was exactly as Nora remembered from his infrequent visits east, barrel-chested, with a booming voice and hearty laugh that had always scandalized her mother. Now in his 50s, his dark hair was streaked with silver, but his eyes still sparkled with the same rebellious light that had made him the family outcast decades earlier. "Nora, my girl," he exclaimed, enveloping her in a bear hug. "When that stagecoach arrived without you, I feared the worst. Where have you been?" Over dinner, Nora recounted her misadventure and the kindness of the Prescotts. Thomas listened attentively, his shrewd eyes missing nothing of his niece's animation when she spoke of Owen and Samuel. Owen Prescott. He mused, stroking his beard. Good man. Built that ranch from nothing after his wife passed. He's respected around these parts, fair in his dealings, stands his ground when necessary. His boy's got a good head on his shoulders, too. They were very kind to me, Nora said, trying to keep her tone neutral. Thomas chuckled. I've been a lawyer long enough to recognize when someone isn't telling the whole truth, Nora. That Prescott fellow made quite an impression on you, didn't he? Nora busied herself with her plate. He was a perfect gentleman, uncle. Nothing more. If you say so, Thomas replied, his eyes twinkling. Well, you're welcome to stay with me as long as you like. The West suits you better than I expected. You've got your mother's delicate looks, but your grandfather's pioneer spirit. The next few weeks passed in a whirl of activity as Nora settled into life in Silver Creek. Thomas introduced her to the town's residents, many of whom welcomed her warmly, though a few of the more established ladies viewed this Eastern newcomer with suspicion. Nora found herself enjoying the straightforward nature of frontier life. She helped her uncle organize his chaotic office, began assisting at the small-town school 3 days a week, and even learned to ride properly under the tutelage of Thomas's friend, Mrs. Wilkins, a widow who ran the local livery. Yet despite her busy days, Nora's thoughts often drifted to the Prescott Ranch and its inhabitants. She wore the arrowhead necklace daily, touching it absently when her mind wandered. Several times, she nearly asked her uncle to take her for a visit, but something always held her back, a strange shyness she had never experienced before. Nearly a month after her arrival in Silver Creek, Nora was arranging books in the small-town library when a familiar voice made her heart leap. Miss Campbell, you're looking well. She turned to find Owen standing in the doorway, hat in hand. He was even more handsome than she remembered, the sunlight from the window catching the gold flecks in his blue eyes. Mr. Prescott, she managed, her voice betraying her surprise. What brings you to town? Supplies, he said, taking a step closer. And Samuel insisted I check if you'd fallen into another ravine since we hadn't heard from you. The hint of reproach beneath his teasing tone made Nora flush with guilt. I meant to visit, or at least send word. I've been adjusting. Owen nodded, his expression softening. Silver Creek seems to agree with you. Samuel will be disappointed he didn't come along. He's been talking about you nonstop. Just Samuel. The words slipped out before Nora could stop them. A slow smile spread across Owen's face, transforming his rugged features. No, he admitted quietly. Not just Samuel. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken feelings. Owen took another step forward, close enough now that Nora could smell the familiar scent of leather and open air that clung to him. I was wondering, he said, his usual confidence giving way to an endearing uncertainty, if you might join us for dinner at the hotel before I head back. Samuel's staying with our neighbor for the night, so I'm in no hurry. Dinner stretched into a long evening of conversation that flowed as easily as if they'd known each other for years instead of days. Owen told her about his journey west after the war, about meeting Sarah in St. Louis and bringing her to the untamed territory, about his dreams for the ranch and for Samuel's future. Nora, in turn, shared more of her own story, her stifling upbringing, her passion for books and learning that had branded her difficult in Boston society, her decision to refuse the marriage her father had arranged. He was a banker, she explained. 45 years old, previously widowed twice, and absolutely convinced that women had no business expressing opinions on anything more substantial than fabric patterns. Owen winced. No wonder you fled. My father couldn't understand my objection. He said Harrington would provide well, that comfort and security were what any sensible woman wanted. Nora shook her head at the memory. When I told him I wanted more respect, partnership, perhaps even love, he called me a foolish romantic who'd been ruined by novels. And are you? Owen asked, his gaze intent. A romantic? Nora considered the question seriously. I believe in practicality and hard work. But yes, I also believe that marriage should be more than a business arrangement. I've seen too many loveless matches among my parents' circle, polite strangers sharing a home, but never their true selves. Owen nodded slowly. Sarah and I had that kind of partnership, at least at first. We respected each other, work together. The love grew from that foundation. A shadow crossed his face. The last year was harder. She missed city life, the comforts and society she'd grown up with. I sometimes wonder if she would have eventually left if the fever hadn't taken her first. I'm sorry, Nora said softly, reaching across the table to touch his hand briefly. Owen's fingers caught hers before she could withdraw. Don't be. I've made my peace with it. Sarah gave me Samuel, and for that, I'll be eternally grateful. As the evening ended, Owen walked Nora back to her uncle's home. On the porch, they stood facing each other, reluctant to part. When will you return to town? Nora asked. 2 weeks, for the cattle auction, Owen replied. Samuel will definitely be with me then. Nora smiled. I look forward to seeing him. And you, she added boldly. Owen reached out slowly, his fingers gently touching the arrowhead that hung at her throat. You wear it. Every day, she admitted. His hand moved to cup her cheek, calloused palm warm against her skin. Nora held her breath as he leaned closer, his intentions clear in his eyes. The kiss was gentle, questioning rather than demanding, but it sent a current of warmth through her entire body. When they parted, Owen's expression was a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. I should go, he murmured, though he made no move to leave. Yes, Nora agreed, equally motionless. A second kiss, deeper than the first, ended only when the sound of approaching footsteps on the boardwalk reminded them they were still on her uncle's front porch in full view of anyone passing by. Owen stepped back reluctantly. 2 weeks, he said, the words both a promise and a question. Nora nodded. 2 weeks. The fortnight passed with excruciating slowness. Nora threw herself into her work at the school and library, but her thoughts constantly drifted to Owen. She found herself watching the road into town, hoping for a glimpse of him even though she knew he wouldn't arrive before the auction. Uncle Thomas observed her distraction with amused understanding, but refrained from commenting directly. Instead, he casually mentioned that the annual Silver Creek Founders' Day celebration would coincide with the cattle auction, and that there would be a dance. You'll need a proper dress, he suggested. Mrs. Henderson at the Mercantile just got in some new fabrics from back east. The day of the auction finally arrived, bringing ranchers and buyers from miles around. Nora spent the morning helping at the schoolhouse, deliberately keeping herself busy to avoid appearing too eager. But by midday, her anticipation got the better of her, and she found herself wandering toward the auction grounds. The crowd was predominantly male ranchers in their work clothes, businessmen in suits, cowboys minding their herds. Nora stood on the periphery, scanning faces until she spotted them Owen and Samuel, standing by a corral containing a small herd of cattle. Samuel noticed her first, his face lighting up as he waved enthusiastically. Miss Campbell, we brought the cattle just like Pa said we would. And they're the best ones here, aren't they, Pa? Owen turned, and the smile that spread across his face when he saw her made Nora's heart flutter. They certainly are, he agreed, though his eyes never left Nora's face. The auction proceeded through the afternoon, with Owen's cattle indeed fetching good prices. Samuel proudly explained to Nora how he had helped raise the calves, his expertise making her smile. When the business was concluded, Owen approached her, hat in hand. We're staying in town for Founders' Day, he said. Samuel's been talking of nothing else for weeks. Just Samuel? Nora teased, echoing their previous conversation. Owen's eyes crinkled at the corners. You know better than that. They agreed to meet for dinner, and Nora hurried home to change. The new dress she had made for Mrs. Henderson's fabric was more fashionable than anything typically seen in Silver Creek, a deep emerald green that complemented her auburn hair, with a more daring neckline than she would have worn in Boston. When she descended the stairs to find Owen and Samuel waiting in her uncle's parlor, the expression on Owen's face told her the effort had been worthwhile. You look like a princess, Samuel declared, his eyes wide. You look beautiful, Owen said more quietly, offering his arm. Dinner at the hotel was a lively affair, with Samuel dominating the conversation, eager to share every detail of ranch life that Nora had missed. Owen watched them both, his affection for his son evident in every glance, his growing feelings for Nora visible to anyone who looked closely. After the meal, they strolled through town, stopping to watch the preparations for the next day's festivities. Lanterns were being strung across the main street, a platform constructed for the musicians, stalls set up for food and games. "Will you save me a dance tomorrow night, Miss Campbell?" Samuel asked solemnly. "I would be honored, Mr. Prescott," Nora replied with equal gravity, fighting a smile. "What about me?" Owen inquired, his tone light, but his eyes serious. Nora met his gaze steadily. "I believe I could spare you a dance or two as well." That night, after Samuel had been escorted to his room at the hotel and Owen had walked Nora home, they lingered in the shadows of her uncle's porch. Their kiss was less hesitant than before, speaking of growing feelings and deepening connection. "I've thought of you every day," Owen confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "And I you," Nora admitted, allowing herself to rest against his solid strength for a moment before reluctantly pulling away. "Tomorrow," she promised. The Founders' Day celebration turned out to be the biggest event of Silver Creek's year. The entire town gathered for speeches, games, food, and music. Nora found herself unexpectedly popular, with several of the town's eligible men requesting dances for the evening's festivities. She was helping Mrs. Wilson judge the pie contest when Owen and Samuel found her. Samuel was dressed in his Sunday best, his hair slicked down in an attempt at neatness that was already failing as wisps escaped to curl around his ears. "Pa says I can participate in the sack race," he announced proudly. "Will you watch me?" "I wouldn't miss it," Nora assured him, her heart warming at his excitement. As Samuel dashed off to find his place among the other children, Owen stepped closer. "He adores you," he said quietly. "The feeling is mutual," Nora replied honestly. Owen's expression grew more serious. "Nora, I need to talk to you about something important. After the dance tonight, could we find some time alone?" Intrigued and a little nervous, Nora nodded. Of course. The day passed in a whirl of activities. Samuel won the sack race, his face glowing with pride as he showed Nora his ribbon. Owen participated in the men's shooting contest, demonstrating an accuracy that impressed even the most experienced marksman. Nora found herself drawn into the community spirit, feeling more at home in this frontier town than she ever had in Boston's elegant parlors. As twilight fell, the dancing began. True to his word, Samuel claimed the first dance, his face serious with concentration as he carefully led Nora through the steps Owen had clearly taught him. When the music ended, he bowed with exaggerated formality that made Nora laugh with delight. Other partners followed Uncle Thomas, the schoolmaster, several ranchers, and the town doctor. Nora enjoyed herself but kept glancing toward Owen, who watched from the edge of the dancing area. When he finally approached her, the musicians were starting a waltz. "May I have this dance, Miss Campbell?" he asked formally, though his eyes held a warmth that was anything but formal. "You may, Mr. Prescott," she replied, placing her hand in his. They moved together as if they had danced 100 times before, his arms strong around her waist, her hand light on his shoulder. The other couple seemed to fade away as they circled the floor. "You dance very well for a rancher," Nora observed, a little breathless from more than just the exertion. "My mother insisted all her sons learn," Owen explained. "She said a man should know how to be gentle as well as strong. A wise woman." "She would have liked you," Owen said softly. "She valued independence of mind and spirit." The music ended too soon, and Nora reluctantly prepared to part from Owen as another hopeful partner approached. But Owen kept her hand in his. "I believe I've been patient enough," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Would you walk with me, Miss Campbell? The night air is perfect for a stroll." Ignoring the raised eyebrows and knowing smiles, Nora nodded and allowed Owen to lead her away from the dance floor. They walked toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open country, the music fading behind them. "Where's Samuel?" Nora asked, suddenly realizing the boy wasn't with them. "Fallen asleep under the mayor's porch with half the other children in town," Owen replied with a chuckle. The excitement was too much for them. They stopped at a small footbridge over the creek that gave the town its name. Stars reflected in the dark water below, and the night was filled with the chorus of crickets and distant music. "What did you want to talk about?" Nora asked, remembering Owen's earlier words. Owen leaned against the bridge railing, his profile strong in the moonlight. "I've been thinking about the future," he began. "About the ranch, about Samuel, about what's missing." Nora's heart began to race, but she remained silent, giving him space to continue. When Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. Being a husband, having a partner to share the good and bad with. He turned to face her fully. Then you literally fell into our lives, and everything changed. You've brought something back that I thought was gone forever. He took her hands in his touch gentle but sure. I know it's only been a short time. I know you came west for independence, not to tie yourself to a man and a child. I have no right to ask anything of you, but I find I must. Owen drew a deep breath. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just for you to consider a future that includes me and Samuel, to consider if the feelings growing between us might be worth exploring further. Nora looked up at him, this man who had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, whose strength was matched by his tenderness, whose love for his son revealed the depth of his character. Owen, she began, but was interrupted by a call from the direction of town. Pa, where are you? They turned to see Samuel running toward them, his hair wild and his clothes rumpled from sleep. Samuel, what's wrong? Owen asked, immediately alert. The boy skidded to a stop before them, out of breath from his run. Nothing's wrong. I woke up and you were gone, and Mayor Jenkins said you walked this way with Miss Campbell. He looked between them curiously. What are you doing out here in the dark? Owen cleared his throat, a hint of color rising in his cheeks. Miss Campbell and I were just talking, son. Samuel's gaze moved from his father to Nora and back again. His young face took on an expression of sudden understanding that was almost comical in its adult seriousness. Pa, he said slowly, do you love Miss Campbell? The directness of the question hung in the air between them. Owen looked momentarily stunned, then resigned. Samuel, that's not a proper question too. It's all right, Nora interrupted gently. She knelt down to Samuel's level, meeting his earnest blue eyes. Your father and I are becoming very good friends. Sometimes adults need time to understand their feelings for each other. Samuel considered this, then asked with equal directness, but do you love my pa? Nora glanced up at Owen, who looked both mortified and curious about her answer. A smile curved her lips as she returned her attention to Samuel. Maybe I love you both, she replied softly. Samuel's face broke into a brilliant smile. I knew it. I told Pa you'd make a perfect mother for me, but he said I shouldn't say things like that because it might scare you away. Samuel, Owen groaned, running a hand through his hair in embarrassment. But Nora had risen to her feet, her eyes fixed on Owen's face. Is that true? She asked quietly. Is that what you were trying to say earlier? Owen met her gaze steadily, his earlier hesitation giving way to certainty. Yes, he said simply. I love you, Nora Campbell. I believe I started falling in love with you that first evening at the ranch, watching you with Samuel, seeing your courage and your kindness. Nora's heart felt too full for her chest, emotions she had kept carefully controlled now breaking free. I love you too, she whispered. Both of you, she added, including Samuel in her glance. Owen closed the distance between them in 2 strides, gathering her in his arms. This kiss was different from their previous ones, deeper, more certain, full of promise and passion barely restrained. Does this mean you'll come live with us? Samuel asked, his practical question breaking the moment and making both adults laugh. Samuel Prescott, you're getting ahead of things. Owen chided gently, though his arm remained around Nora's waist. Actually, Nora said thoughtfully, I think he's asking exactly the right question. She turned in Owen's embrace to face him directly. Is that what you're asking me, Owen? To marry you? To come live at the ranch? To be a mother to Samuel? Owen's expression grew solemn. It is. I know it's sudden. I know the ranch isn't Boston, that the life is hard sometimes. But we would face it together, build something beautiful together. Nora's answer was in her eyes before it reached her lips. Yes, she said firmly. Yes to all of it. Samuel whooped with delight and threw himself at both of them, creating a 3-way embrace that had them all laughing with joy. The walk back to town was filled with Samuel's excited chatter about all the things he would show Nora at the ranch, how she could have the bedroom next to his, how he would help her learn to milk the cows and gather eggs. Samuel, Owen finally interrupted, his tone amused but firm. Miss Campbell and I will be sharing a bedroom after we're married. The boy considered this information. Because you love each other? He asked. Yes, Nora answered, squeezing Owen's hand. Because we love each other. Samuel nodded, accepting this adjustment to his plans. When will you get married? Tomorrow? Owen laughed. Not quite that soon. We need to do things properly. But soon, Nora added, smiling up at Owen. I don't see any reason for a long engagement, do you? The news of their engagement spread through Silver Creek with the speed only possible in a small town. Uncle Thomas, far from being surprised, merely commented that it had taken them long enough to come to their senses. He insisted on hosting the wedding at his home and giving Nora away, since her father had effectively relinquished that right. The following weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. Nora divided her time between helping at the school, making arrangements for the wedding, and visiting the Prescott Ranch to learn more about what would soon be her home. On these visits, she and Owen stole moments alone while Samuel was occupied with chores or play. They talked of their hopes and dreams, shared stories from their pasts, and made plans for their future together. Their kisses grew more passionate, testing the limits of their restraint as the wedding day approached. Samuel watched their growing closeness with approval, occasionally offering suggestions for improvements to the ranch that he thought Nora might appreciate: curtains for the windows, a bigger garden, maybe even a piano someday. My mother played, he explained seriously. I don't remember it much, but Pa says the music made the whole house feel different. Nora's heart ached for the boy who had lost his mother so young, but she was determined not to replace Sarah in Samuel's memory. Instead, she hoped to create a new kind of family with him and Owen, honoring the past while building their future. The wedding day dawned clear and warm, a perfect June morning. Nora dressed in a gown of ivory satin that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make, simpler than a Boston wedding dress, but more elegant than anything Silver Creek had seen before. You look beautiful, Uncle Thomas said gruffly when he came to escort her downstairs. Prescott's a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, Nora replied, kissing his cheek. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. Owen, handsome in a new suit, watched Nora approach with such naked adoration in his eyes that she nearly stumbled. Samuel stood proudly at his father's side, the ring-bearer's duty taken with utmost seriousness. When it came time for the vows, Owen's strong voice carried clearly through the room. I, Owen James Prescott, take you, Nora Elizabeth Campbell, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, until death parts us. Nora repeated the traditional words, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. Then, to everyone's surprise, Owen nodded to Samuel, who stepped forward importantly. I have something to say too, the boy announced. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and carefully read from it. I, Samuel Thomas Prescott, promise to be a good son to both my pa and my new ma. I promise to help around the ranch and not complain too much about washing behind my ears. I promise to always remember my first ma in heaven while loving my new ma here with us. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Samuel finished his impromptu vows. Nora knelt and embraced him, whispering, and I promise to love you as my own son, always. The celebration that followed was joyous, a true community event with everyone in Silver Creek participating. There was dancing and feasting, speeches and toasts, laughter, and a few sentimental tears. As the evening drew to a close, Owen leaned close to Nora. Ready to go home, Mrs. Prescott? The name sent a thrill through her. Home, she repeated, savoring the word. Yes, I'm ready. They bid farewell to their guests, with Samuel riding alongside them in the wagon for the first few miles before they reached the Miller farm where he would spend the night, giving the newlyweds their privacy. Are you sure you'll be all right? Nora asked him, smoothing his hair one last time. Samuel rolled his eyes good-naturedly. I'm not a baby, Ma. I've stayed with the Millers lots of times. The casual use of Ma made Nora's heart swell. She hugged him tightly before letting him go, watching as Mrs. Miller led him inside with promises of pie and stories. The remainder of the journey to the ranch passed in companionable silence, Owen's arm around Nora's waist, her head resting on his shoulder. The night was beautiful, stars brilliant in the vast Montana sky, the air sweet with the scent of summer grasses. When they arrived, Owen surprised her by lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Welcome home, Mrs. Prescott, he murmured, setting her gently on her feet in the main room. Nora looked around at what was now her home, the comfortable furniture, the bookshelves, the stone fireplace. Owen had added touches for her arrival: wildflowers in a jar on the table, new curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on the rocking chair that some of the town women had made as a wedding gift. "It's perfect," she said softly. Owen's arms encircled her from behind, his chin resting on her head. "Not quite perfect yet," he corrected gently. "But it will be, with you here." He turned her in his arms, his expression growing serious. "I know there will be adjustments. Ranch life isn't easy. There will be hard days, long winters, times when we struggle. But I promise you this: you will never doubt my love for you, or my commitment to our family." Nora reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong lines of his jaw. "And I promise you that I've never been more certain of any choice in my life. This is where I belong, with you and Samuel, building our life together." Their kiss deepened, passion no longer held in check by propriety or circumstance. Owen lifted her once more, carrying her up the stairs to what was now their bedroom, where the rest of the night was spent in the tender discovery of each other as husband and wife. The years that followed fulfilled the promise of that first night. The Prescott Ranch prospered under their joint care. Owen's practical knowledge combined with Nora's organizational skills and fresh perspective, creating a successful enterprise that grew steadily. Samuel thrived with a mother's love back in his life. Nora encouraged his natural curiosity and intelligence, continuing his education beyond what the local school could provide. By 15, he was as comfortable discussing literature and history as he was training horses or mending fences. 2 years after their wedding, Nora gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Sarah, honoring both their mothers. 2 years after that, a son joined the family, Thomas Owen, sturdy and determined from his first breath. On the evening of their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen and Nora sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching their children play in the yard. Samuel, now 16 and nearly as tall as his father, was teaching 5-year-old Elizabeth to throw a lasso, while 3-year-old Thomas toddled after them, determined to be included. "Did you ever imagine this?" Owen asked, his arm around Nora's shoulders. "That day when you took that tumble from your horse?" Nora leaned into his embrace, contentment warming her from within. "Never. I was running away from one life, not realizing I was running towards something infinitely better." Owen's fingers absently played with the arrowhead that still hung around Nora's neck. "I thank God every day for that stumbling horse," he confessed. "It brought me the greatest blessing of my life." Samuel approached the porch, carrying a sleepy Thomas while Elizabeth skipped alongside. "The little ones are worn out," he reported. "I think it's story time. I want the one about how Ma fell off her horse and Pa rescued her," Elizabeth declared, climbing into Nora's lap. "Again?" Owen teased. "You've heard that one 100 times. It's my favorite," the little girl insisted. "Because it's how we became a family." Samuel settled on the porch step, Thomas curled against his chest. "It's my favorite too," he admitted. "Remember how I asked if you loved Pa, and you said maybe you loved us both?" Nora smiled at the memory. "I said maybe because I was still getting used to the idea myself. But I think I already knew the truth." "And what truth is that?" Owen asked, his eyes soft as he gazed at his wife. Nora looked around at her family, the strong, good man who was her husband, the thoughtful young man Samuel was becoming, the beautiful children they had created together, the home they had built with love and hard work. "That some questions answer themselves," she said softly. "That sometimes love finds us when we least expect it and in forms we never imagined. And that falling off a horse in the Montana Territory was the luckiest accident of my life." Owen leaned over to kiss her gently, ignoring Elizabeth's giggle and Samuel's good-natured groan. "Not luck," he corrected. "Destiny." As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in the same fiery colors as the day they first met, Nora knew he was right. From Boston society to the western frontier, from a solitary woman fleeing convention to a beloved wife and mother at the heart of a thriving family, her journey had been unexpected but perfect in its outcome. This was where she belonged. This was home. This was love in its truest, most enduring form, found in the most unexpected place, with a rugged rancher and his earnest son who had captured her heart and changed her life forever.